This is not a story about a woman who gave birth to a monster. This is the story of a debt being paid. The river had been patient. For 100 years, it had watched the village grow on its banks, and for 100 years, a promise made by a forgotten ancestor lay dormant in the soil. The river had come to collect, not with a flood, but with a birth. And the price was to be paid in the flesh and blood of an innocent woman named Ilara. Her husband Kale, a man of ledgers and logic, first noticed the change in her cravings. Ilara, who had always loved the sweet, milky taste of kheer, now turned away from it. Instead, she developed a strange hunger for the raw, metallic taste of river fish and the dark, loamy scent of wet earth after a storm. She would spend hours by the window, not looking at the village, but at the slow, endless coil of the river as it snaked its way across the plains. Kale saw a sickness of the mind. Ilara felt a deep ancestral calling in her blood. The birth itself was an omen. As her labor began, a hush fell over the village. The birds stopped singing. The river, usually a churning, muddy brown, turned unnaturally still and clear. The midwife who came to their home worked in a terrified silence, her hands trembling as she brought the child into the world. He was born without a sound. His upper body was that of a perfect human boy, but his skin was cool to the touch, and his eyes were a piercing, ancient gold that held no infancy. From his waist down, his flesh was a marvel of reptilian creation, a mosaic of tough, jade-green scales that formed powerful legs and webbed feet. He did not cry. He simply watched, as if he had seen 1,000 worlds before this one. It was the village elder, a man whose memory was as long and winding as the river itself, who understood. He was summoned to their home, and upon seeing the child, he did not flinch. He bowed his head. "The pact is honored," he said, his voice a dry whisper. He told them the story. A century ago, their village founder, facing a catastrophic drought that threatened to turn their land to dust, had stood on the riverbank and made a desperate bargain with the spirit of the water. In exchange for the river never again running dry, he had promised it a tribute, the most precious child of the 100th generation. The river had kept its promise, and now it was time to collect on its debt. Kyle refused to believe it. "It is a defect, a curse of nature, not a legend," he would rage. He was a modern man, and in his world there was no room for river spirits and ancient debts. He saw only a deformed son who brought shame to his name. He kept the child, whom Ilara had named Kai, hidden from the world, a secret source of his growing resentment. But Ilara accepted her fate with the solemn gravity of a queen. This child, she understood, was not truly hers to keep. He was a tithe. Her love for him was no less powerful, but it was transformed into a sacred, heartbreaking duty. She became the keeper of a life that belonged to another. She raised him according to his nature. Their small home became a shrine to the river. She filled tubs with cool water where he would spend hours, his reptilian body moving with an innate, silent grace. He never learned to speak with words, but communicated with a low, guttural rumble from deep in his chest. He ignored the wooden toys Kale bought him, preferring instead to hold smooth gray stones that Ilara fetched for him from the riverbank. He was neither boy nor beast. He was a living covenant. The years passed. On the morning of Kale's 7th birthday, the signs began. Despite the seasonal rains, the river began to recede. Its powerful current slowed to a sluggish crawl. The fish vanished, and the lush green crops on its banks began to wither and turn yellow. The village elders grew restless. The river was growing impatient. The debt, they whispered, was overdue. Kale, watching his fields die and his livelihood turn to dust, finally felt the cold grip of the truth he had denied for so long. The legend was real. The debt was real. And the price was his son. The day of the collection came on a hot, windless afternoon. There was no ceremony, no crowd, only a silent, shared understanding. Ilara bathed her son one last time. She dressed him, not in the clothes of a boy, but wrapped him in a simple white muslin cloth. She took his small webbed hand and led him from their home. Kale stood in the doorway, his face a mask of agony. He made no move to stop her. His war between logic and legend was over, and both had lost. Ilara walked with her son to the water's edge, her steps heavy with a love and grief too profound for tears. She did not stop at the bank. She waded into the cool, still water, the river accepting her as one of its own. When she was waist-deep, she knelt. bringing herself face to face with the boy. She looked into his ancient golden eyes and saw no fear. She saw only a deep, serene understanding. He had known this was his destiny all along. She kissed his forehead, a mother's final blessing. Then, with a strength she did not know she possessed, she released him. Kai did not struggle or swim away in a panic. He simply turned, gave her one last, lingering look, and then, with a graceful flick of his powerful tail, he dove down and vanished into the murky green depths. As the last ripple of his disappearance faded, a new current began to stir at Alara's feet, a deep, powerful pulse from the heart of the river. The water began to rise, turning from a sickly green to a rich, life-giving brown. The river, its tribute received, was breathing again. Alara stood alone in the rising water, her duty fulfilled, her womb and her heart forever empty. She was the mother of the tide, the woman who paid 100-year-old debt, forever bound to the river that had both given and taken her only son.